What we've got here is failure to communicate.
From sunny Southern California, we bring you Meet Bridget, a podcast for building confident communication and female badassery. We spotlight women who have bridged the gaps in their lives by building strong relationships and speaking their teenage dreams into reality.
And I think, you got to be careful, consider the source first of where it's coming from, number one. Number two, yeah, I think it's important to take it all in. Even if you disagree with it, take it in and think about it, let it marinate a little bit.
Welcome back to Meet Bridget, a show that dives into the often untold teenage and young adult experiences of successful women from all types of backgrounds and in all sorts of careers. This show is an extension of Bridget, a confidence and communication coaching service for young women. I'm Asha Gabriel, and I co-host this show alongside my best friend, Kashia Rosenberg. If you've been listening along for seasons 1 and 2, you probably know that Kashia had her baby, Jude, at the end of season 2, and he is perfect. After a little break, we're excited to kick off season 3 with this episode. We're back, baby. Today, I am interviewing our incredible guest on my own, but keep an ear out for Kashia when she returns in next week's episode. Today, I am so thrilled to introduce singer-songwriter and performer Annie Bosko.
Hey.
Annie's known for her bold California sound and has toured the country opening for acts such as Dirk Bentley, Blake Shelton, Martina McBride, Winona Judd, Big and Rich, Josh Turner, and more. She has shared this stage performing with Adele, Darius Rucker, Andrea Belli, Josh Groban, and more. And she has been recognized in Rolling Stone, and you might also have heard her beautiful voice singing the National Anthem at the NBA All-Star Game. Amazing. She grew up as a middle child in a family of 5 children, daughter to a third-generation farmer. At 19, she traveled cross-country to Nashville to make her dream come true. There's just so much I can't wait to get in here. That was such a mouthful because all of your incredible success. So welcome to Annie Bosko.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you on. We've been talking with you for a little while about finding a time to get on, and I know that you are launching your album soon, so I think this timing is just perfect.
Me too. It's good timing, for sure. I wanted to make sure, I'm always intentional about that. It's you want to have something new to talk about or to promote, and you want to genuinely feel excited. And that's usually when I'm most excited, So
Totally.
I'll give a better interview because of that.
For sure. Well, we always usually start our interviews out by going way back to your childhood, to your roots, and right from the get-go, I am so interested. I mean, I don't know very many people that come from a family as big as yours and with such an interesting background. It really is, when you think of like a bio of a country artist, it's like, what is more classic than being a daughter of a farmer with 4 other siblings? So can you tell us a little bit about your early days, your childhood, how you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up, around a lot of noise. It's you really never got a lot of alone time, but so fun, never a dull moment. And I think storytelling or songwriting probably came a lot from that. I was just observing so many experiences and personalities and, life stuff. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom and was very active and, had dinner on the table every night. We prayed every night together before we had dinner, which I realize is so rare in today's world or even in that world, really, to have that experience. I mean, look, with so many personalities, there's always a lot of drama. I have a gay younger brother. I have, all America older brother. I have older sister. I have younger sister. So it's I tell people I sort of have everything, every full
Yeah.
area of the spectrum. I got it. I grew up with it. My parents were very conservative, very Catholic. And my dad was in farming my whole life, worked really hard, worked really long hours. But that was a fun experience because I think growing up with that, I have memories of my grandpa pulling in at my school and delivering produce from the back of his truck.
Amazing.
Yeah, my mom would make strawberry jam from his strawberries and, give it to the teachers and they loved it. And it was a job. I didn't grow up on the farm. I grew up in, a very suburban town. But my dad, definitely worked the long hours. And I think growing up with that would definitely shaped my work ethic. And I think it also is what led me to ultimately sing country music because I grew up singing everything, but was exposed to a lot of country music because of my dad. And I think that had to do with his work. I'm sure he just has a love for country music. So, yeah, here I am.
Totally. Well, I can imagine, I mean, growing up, a daughter of a farmer, it's like it's interesting because your sound has this very, like, grassroots, like, of America feel to it.
That's cool. Thank you. I love that.
Of course. I feel like a lot of that must come from, when your career is literally, like, tilling the earth and, like, growing something to feed people that, that kinda probably seeps into just the way that you raise your family and the way you see the
Wow.
world. So
I feel like I should have you write my bio. I'm like, I need to write that down. I gotta write that down because that was so good. But no, I do think about that. It's like, I'll still have friends send me like pictures of Boscovich Farm cilantro that they find in Trader Joe's
Yep,
somewhere. And I always think about that too with music. It's like you can only really reap what you sow. And so you do think
yeah,
about, like food nourishes people, music nourishes people. And so like what do I want to create to nourish people? And I think about that a lot right now because it's sort of like, man, like what does the world really need? Like what do people need to
yeah.
hear right now, you know? That's a question that I ask myself a lot.
Well, it's interesting with music too. I think about this all the time. I love music, but it's like when you put a song out there, you really like you put it out, but you don't really know where like the end listener is, where they're
No.
at when they're listening to your music,
Yeah.
how it might affect them. And when you kind of think of like the food production too, it's like you harvest it, you put your best into the season and picking it and packaging it, and then it goes off and it will take care of people and they'll use it how they will. So I just think that there's something so I mean it's like immortal with music,
Yeah.
especially like fruit, everything has a season, but
Totally.
the music you're putting out now, like, your great granddaughter could be, listening to it with her friends. They
I think about that. I think about that all the time. It's so true. Yeah. And you do put a lot of weight on it because you're like, oh, I want it to succeed. And what if it doesn't? And I want enough people to hear it. But then I can also stand in my own way when I think too much about that because I think you gotta just do your best and then put it out and then sort of let magic in the universe and God sort of do what it's supposed to do with it. Because oftentimes it's in ways that I never could have predicted or planned, and I just have to do the best that I can to kind of put the plan together. But then you also have to allow for like divine stuff to take place with it, you know?
totally. No, I can relate to that. I mean, when we first started the podcast, it was like as a reaction to COVID shutting down these in-person workshops that we were doing. So we're like, okay, either we stop or like we find another way of reaching our audience. And then it's kind of blossomed into this thing that we never even thought would, be an even bigger audience than we ever had before. It was because of what we thought was like a terrible obstacle. But a lot of the times when we first started, we're like, okay, we should over edit this, take that out, do this, do that. And at a certain point, we're like, "All right, these are our voices. They stumble, they mumble, they break up, and, like, that's real, and that's actually what people want to hear." So, it takes a lot of bravery, I think, to make a career out of that kind of, really faith in what you're putting out and how it will be received. So, back to your, like, childhood. So, it sounds like you were sandwiched right in the middle, like, in this little symmetrical family situation. Can you talk a little bit about the early days and maybe break out, like, what ages your siblings are or the age differences?
Yeah, my older brother is, let's see, he is 5 years older than me. My older sister's 3 years older than me. My little brother is a year and 3 months younger than me. And then my little sister is 5 years younger than me. So kind
Okay.
of, yeah, my parents sort of knocked it all out in I guess like almost a 10-year span, right? Yeah.
Unbelievable. I
Yes.
cannot imagine having 5 kids. I'm sitting here
Uh,
like, "Oh my gosh, 2."
I can't even imagine having one. I'm like, oh my God. I hope yeah,
Unreal. So you guys didn't grow up on the farm,
no.
but were you nearby? Where was, like, the farm?
Yeah, we were nearby and it was fun. We had a little corn stand where they sold produce and we would help out in the summer times and like, husk corn and sell it and an arena and we had 5 quarter horses because my uncle was more into the rodeo world, not my dad so much. But it was fun to grow up around horses, to get to ride horses and go trail riding and to grow up with that, in Southern California, which I think probably happens more than people think, but I feel like I grew up a total tomboy, like, I was always outside, whether it was horseback riding, riding horses, riding bikes, climbing trees. Like I was ultimate surfing. Like I was ultimate tomboy girl.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun because I feel like when people think like country music or kind of like a ranch life experience, they think of like middle America, they think
Yeah.
of Texas and Montana and that kind of thing,
Totally.
which is amazing. But there's definitely that element in California, and you kind of bring this like sort of like surf hippie meets,
Yeah. Totally.
country ranch girl vibe to the industry, which, I think is unique and,
For sure.
is obviously people are paying attention to. When you were a child, like, how did you see yourself as, like, different from your siblings? How was kinda your family dynamic at home?
Yeah, I just became really fiercely independent, which I think is normal for middle children. And I started like working at a young age, odd jobs at like restaurants or things. Like, my first job was I would sing happy birthday to people at Macaroni Grill and in Italian when I was like 15. And I learned that like if I learned how to sing it. And it's funny, I still to this day will whip it out and people are like, how do you know how to sing happy birthday in Italian? I'm like, it was my first job. And it was great because like, I would get tips, and so I started just to, like, work, and I loved the feeling of working, and I loved just going off and, like, I was just really independent, which is probably why I also left home at a young age, to go pursue music. Ultimately felt like Nashville was the right place for me. It's funny also when you get us all together, even though I'm the entertainer, I'm the, like, most quiet usually, like, everyone
Yeah.
overpowers me. So I think it's shocking because people see me on stage and they're like, "Oh, wow, she's doing this," but really, I'm, like, the quiet one, and, like, they all talk over me, which is fine, I don't care, I enjoy it because I don't need to be, like, the center of attention. I don't even like being the center of attention, honestly, in, like, social settings. So for me, it's more because I think I get to have that moment when I'm on the stage. Like, that's when I get to, do my thing and it's fun. So when I'm not doing that, I'm totally fine, like, you know, not having to be like the, "Hey." So I was sort of, I
Yeah.
guess, like, the more quiet and shy one until I started performing, and that's sort of where I naturally got attention because of what I did, and I started doing, like, theater productions and singing in church and singing at football games, singing really honestly anywhere anyone told me to, I would just pop up and, like, sing, and that's sort of how I started to gain attention. Yeah, I was made fun of a lot, by my siblings, like, I wasn't, like I wouldn't say I was, like, the cool kid at all.
So at home, like, what were your siblings like? I mean, what could they this is interesting because 'cause I'm
Mm.
like, how could they possibly make fun of you? You have this gorgeous voice and so sweet.
Well, you're like a kid, and so, God, it's like you make fun of each other for everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I had a season of bad breath, and, like, my they loved to tease me about that. It's gone now,
Yeah.
but I don't
Yeah.
even know what it was. I'm like, "What was I eating?" I think I was not brushing my teeth because I hated the taste of mint as a kid, so I would, like, pretend I was brushing my teeth, but then not actually brush
Yeah.
so
I mean, all
disgusting.
sorts of things. I have daughters, and I'm like, "Oh, daughters," and, like, the poop talk in our house is, like, it's a lot. Like, there's all sorts of things that little kids go
You
through
talk
when
about poop
they
a lot, yeah. No, and the funny thing is now I'm like a dental hygiene freak. I, like, brush 3 times a day. I blot like, now I'm like the opposite. I guess whatever they could do to take the piss out of me, they did, and it was like I'd be doing big things, like my first job with Disney when I'm 13, but it was never like, "Oh, she's doing that," like, it was always like, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, she just went and did that." It was, like, funny. I mean, my siblings are the most proud out of anyone and still are like my number one supporters. But I didn't have a momager or I think my parents tried to keep me normal and they didn't want to expose me to like the issues that can come with entertainment.
Mhm.
And so I think I did a really good job of keeping me humble.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say. I mean, I grew up as a middle child also,
Wow.
and it's funny, like, when I tell my friends and stuff that when I was a kid, I was, like, cripplingly shy
Yeah.
and, like, felt like I wasn't really heard in my family. Like, we'd sit at
Mhm.
the dinner table, I'm like, "I can't get a word in."
Yeah.
I'm like, would try every once in a while because 'cause I'm like, "You guys are talking and I just wanna say something," you
Oh,
know?
still.
Like, and when I go home, we go right back into those roles, but then it's funny because outside in the world and in these things I pursue and stuff, it's like people are like, "Oh, you're so outgoing," and I'm like, "If you only knew,
Yeah.
where we come from," but I also think that it does keep you humble. I felt like this same kind of energy when I started modeling and stuff, like, my family sort of like, "Okay," until, like, something big comes out or you do something, then they're like, really excited,
Of
and it's not
course.
of course, they support you along the whole way, but I think sometimes family like that keeps you grounded, but also keeps you ambitious for more because I definitely think that there's a motivator in terms of,
For
like,
sure.
showing his family that it's real because those are the people that see you from the very beginning when your dream is just that. It's just a dream, and, it's so hard to succeed in entertainment and music industries that it's like,
Gosh.
our parents, they wanna keep us safe by, like, making sure like, that is a dream, and it's really hard for it to come true.
Oh my god, yeah. They might feel like they did everything to get me to, like, not do it almost. It was like,
Yeah,
"Please go to college. Please choose something else. Please." Whereas most parents would be like, "Do it, do the thing," like,
yeah,
mine was the opposite. But I know it was just, like, protection because it was fear of all the negative things that can come along with it, which there are, there are.
yeah.
But ultimately, I think they saw, like, "Oh, this is like her. This is who she is. This is what she's destined to do." And she's working at it, she's not just like sitting around like pretending to be
Waiting for it to happen to her or
exactly.
something, yeah.
They saw that I was really going for it and I was working hard. So now they're like the most supportive ever.
Yeah. Oh, and at a certain point, it's like something like that that's so within you. It's like the longer you try to just deny it or force yourself into something that isn't really like who you are at your core, then
Yeah,
it's like that's where some of the more destructive stuff can come in because it's,
totally.
these fighting desires really. Do you remember like first time you sang or realized that you loved to sing?
Yeah. There's a couple like moments that I have that are so vivid in my memory. Like I remember like driving with my dad. I think, on weekends, sometimes he would go just like drive through the fields to look at them and to like, or go, stop at a market to like go to the produce aisle or whatever. I remember driving with him somewhere and hearing Crazy by Patsy Cline for the first time. And he was like, "This is the best singer. You need to learn from her." It's like, that was a moment where I was like, oh, and I just remember like this voice grabbing me, through the speaker. It was like, just grabbed my soul. Remember that, and I remember when I was 5, I sang "Over the Rainbow" at my great-grandmother's funeral, and that song really spoke to me, and, I have very little recollection of it, but, I do remember it happening, and I remember the feeling of people being like, "Oh my god, like, this voice just came out of this little thing," and I was so young, and I think about it now, like, to be 5 and sing in front of people, and I was shy, so that was, like, shocking that I actually did that 'cause when people would come over and my parents would ask me to sing for people, I would usually sing behind a plant. They joked I was like a
Mhm.
singing plant. I was like, "Oh," behind a plant, or it was under a table because I was so nervous. I was like I couldn't have people look at me, and I would just sing. And so, when I was 5 and then I was 13 and I got the job with Disney, like, that's when I realized, okay, I could actually do this as a career. Because prior to then, I didn't really see any way of it was just a dream, but I was like, "I don't know how to make
Yeah.
this an actual career, as a professional." And so I think that was a moment where I was like, "Okay, maybe I could be a professional at this?" And there were a bunch of other things that happened along the way.
We love, like, diving into that, like, that first break kinda moment because I think for a lot of our listeners are young women, and they're trying to figure out, like, the first step to take towards a career, and sometimes it's, like, it's clear and you can look it up online, and it's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go apply to this thing." But
Yeah,
I think, honestly, for most of the women that we interview, it's a sense of passion and desire and wanting something, and then chance or an opportunity just kinda, like it becomes apparent to them at some
right.
point, and they take the first opportunity they can get and do the most they can with it. So, can you tell us a little bit about how that, like, Disney opportunity became an opportunity,
Yeah.
and how you responded to it?
When I was 13, my aunt knew somebody that worked at Disney, and they had just done a version of Part of Your World for Little Mermaid 2, and Shelley Wright, who is a country singer, she did a version of it, and they needed another version with a younger voice to be like the daughter. So she said, "Oh my gosh, they're looking for a young voice. Can you get over here? He's here." And he just kind of explained to me what's going on, and I told him, "You're a singer." So I drove to my aunt's house, or my mom drove me, showed up. I sang for him like a cappella on the spot, and he hired me like that. And so it was they call it God winks, like where God sort of like winks at you. So that was so surreal that it happened so easily too. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's bizarre because I think at that point, I mean, what girl my age didn't grow up like obsessed with all Disney movie songs. Those soundtracks were the best, some of the best soundtracks ever made, some of the best songs ever written, some of the best melodies ever written. So I was a freak with Disney soundtracks and movies and the music in them because there's still to this day, like nothing, there's nothing like it. You go through those songs and
Yeah,
you're like,
they're iconic.
oh my God. Yeah, and exactly. And songs that will be around forever. I think that was major for me. And I got to go, to Burbank and the major studio and like go in a studio for the first time and put headphones on. And my mom goes, I'll never forget it. You put a pencil in your hair, and you took your shoes off, and then you just like ripped, and I don't,
Yeah.
and it was so cool and so surreal for it to be Disney because that was something that I had, grown up loving. So that was one, and another one was when I was in my teens, I think I was like 16 or 17. I was able to meet producer David Foster through the Gretzky family because I had gotten to know their daughter who was in music. So I was able to show up at David's studio and meet him. And, I was like, what do you do? And well, I sing. And he said, sing for me. And it's okay. Well, what would you like me to sing? He's like, how about The Power of Love, Celine Dion? And I'm like, big song, And so
Yeah, casual, like, "How about Celine Dion?" And you're like, "Sure."
well, because like that's, he produced all those big singers. He like
Yeah.
hits the instrumental track version. I'm singing it in the studio. And I think I did good. I did okay. I don't know that I like nailed it. I walked outside. He was having someone else singing. He was auditioning for a singer for a show he was doing,
Mhm.
and so he was having other singers sing, and I'm outside, and I called my mom, and I'm like, "I did The Power of Love, but I don't know if it was good, I don't know, it was okay, I didn't nail it, I didn't totally flunk it, and it wasn't totally a piece of shit, but it wasn't the best thing ever, and I don't know." And she was like, "Well, did you tell him you sing I Will Always Love You? He produced I Will Always Love You for Whitney Houston, The Bodyguard." And I'm like, "Oh god, yeah, I should tell him. You're right. Okay." So I walked back in and I'm like, and also I can sing the Bodyguard song.
Yeah.
And so anyways, he had me sing it a cappella, no music. And like a week later, I'm singing on stage with Celine Dion. And it was just like one of those moments where you're just going, how is this even real? Like, what is my life? How did this happen? And it just felt like a dream. And I have small little glimpses of it, but I think that was also so defining because it was also, being around the greats and legends and learning from them and just how they work, their work ethic, how they carry themselves. And meeting Celine Dion was so huge. I just grew up idolizing her and seeing what an amazing person she was, and how she greeted every security guard she walked past, how she treated
Right.
everyone, like little people. And I just think that's who she is. It's not even really
Yeah.
calculated. That's just who she is. She grew up one of 12 kids, and very humble beginnings. And Renee was amazing. He brought my mom out into the audience to watch me sing center audias. And so that was such a great experience because it was like, okay, here's the best in the world who happens to also be the nicest in the world. Like I'm in the
Yeah.
dressing room and she's like, hold my baby. And I'm holding her baby. And, that's just who she is. Just so unpretentious, so unpretentious. Not even an ounce of diva attitude, yet the biggest diva singer in the world. And so that was so inspiring. And also, okay, like maybe I really can do this. And God is sending me these opportunities to show me something.
Well, and what I'm hearing too is that, like, when you get these opportunities, if you were to respond like, "Oh, I'm not ready," or like, "Can I get back to you in like, a few days and prepare something," or like just doubted yourself in any capacity, when you have those opportunities, like they'll just pass. But it seems like for both of those settings, for the Little Mermaid thing where you're like, okay, let's just go. Like I'll go over there and just sing right in front of him, and with David Foster, even to say like, this is my opportunity and I wanna make sure that he heard me, and recognizes what I can do, and to go
Yeah.
back and be like, "Let me try again," is bold, and I think that for a lot of people, especially in creative careers, it's difficult to call yourself something when you don't think that you have, like, proven it yet or done something that merits, the title of saying like, "I am a singer,"
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. I'm an actor, I'm a podcaster, I'm something. And it's funny because I think especially for people who come from humble backgrounds or big families or, are just humble people, it's
Mhm.
like you never quite feel like you have all the credentials to,
Yeah.
it's like you made it. You probably it's interesting because I've met some very successful creatives that are like, they don't believe that they've made it, even though, like, all the successes have, like, racked up. They're like,
Right.
"There's still so much to
Yeah.
do."
You're so right, though. You hit the nail on the head with the you're never ready, right? And there's always a scratch in your throat or an allergy or a tired or, I caught myself doing it the other day in a meeting. I like woke up with a weird sore throat and I told them and I was like, you can't do that. Like you just can't, no negative, no doubt. No, don't even give people a reason to doubt and I wasn't ready to sing with Celine Dion. I wasn't ready to sing I Will Always Love You. It was out of my range. I was pulling my voice, you know. But the truth is, like, you're never ready. And you'll never have all and even when you think you've made it, and you do make it, or you do have those moments, you're still not gonna feel like you're ever, like you've ever really made it. Right. And I think
You're
you
right.
talk to the biggest artists in the world and they still feel that way, and they're still like second guessing or, is anyone going to come to the show? And you're like, you just sold out 3 nights at the forum. Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, I'm just worried no one's going to come to the show. And you're like, okay. So I learned like, man, this stuff never goes away. And you just got to like move forward in the face of fear. And the people that do over and over and over again, I think end up winning.
Yeah. And I think that's probably part of the thrill of it too, when you think about, like, what draws you to a career like this, is that, like, limitless potential, that there is always another stage to step on, another audience to reach. You won't hit a point where you're like, "I've made it and I'm done,"
Yeah,
that it's like, then what would you do? It would be
totally.
boring. And I think that that kind of personality really succeeds in
Yeah,
this
you
kind of
have to
thing.
have it or else it's just if you're looking for, like, the security, the sure, the thing, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
never, like, the assurance of everything because nothing ever goes smoothly either. Like, I always go, there's always gonna be a hiccup at every show. It's not a matter of if, it's when. So it's like, how do you react in the face of things going wrong and being unexpected and, like, out of your control? And it's like, it's a big thing for sure. Being able to roll with the punches.
Did you have any moments, especially early on, that you, like, question things or you're like, "Oh, man, this is the end," or like, "I gotta do something else?"
All the time still. Always. And again, I think it's like, it's just moving forward in spite of it because those voices are always there. I don't know if they ever really go away. It's a matter of like mastering the fear and using it to your advantage. It's like, because the fear will always be there. The voice is telling you, well, I don't know, it's always there. And the nerves are always there. Like I always get nervous before any gig, on different scales. Like sometimes I'll be like more confident than others or I won't really care as much, for certain things because I'm like, "Whatever." And that's usually when I do the best. I shouldn't say
Yeah.
that because I do always care. I always do, whether it's 2 people in the audience or 20,000. I'm always, like, want it to be my best. But, certain factors will make you more nervous for certain performances, but I think the nerves are a good thing. It means you care. And, yeah, I definitely have had moments where I struggled with my vocal cords. I had an issue a couple years ago in a surgery, and that was scary. I thought, well, maybe that's it. Maybe I'll never like sing the same again. And fortunately, I think most people would say I sing better than I did before. I don't know if it's because I sing a lot more or I train my voice more. I take care of it better. And I wasn't at that point. I would go play 4-hour shows and take 4 ibuprofen and not think anything of it, and really like you shouldn't be doing that. I know that now. I didn't know that then. And I think in general, I just take care of myself even better now and careful about, you know, I guess what I put into my body and about physical exercise and mental and spiritual and everything. It's all sort of all encompassing for me. Yeah, but that was a moment where I thought, well, maybe this is it.
Yeah. We, as a podcast and as a company, we focus a lot on confidence. And a lot of people, come to us, they're like, I get so nervous, like speaking in public, interviewing, performing. And I love the just the science of nerves. And
Yeah.
I think that there is misunderstanding that people think that like, oh, people that are able to do that stuff just don't get nervous. And like you said, it's like, no, if anything, like you get more and more nervous because it becomes more and more important to you. But a coach of mine actually said the same thing that it was like your heart racing, feeling that kind of the butterflies and everything. It means that something is important to you. And those physical responses are actually like instinctive ways for our body to prepare us for something, that you are actually reaching your peak ability to do what you're there to do. And then I think once you kind of channel that energy into what you're doing, combined with like focusing not so much on yourself and how you're feeling and bottling all of that up back into yourself, focusing on like, okay, who am I doing this for? Like,
Mm,
where is what I'm trying to do? Where is it
yeah.
going? Focusing on that, like kind of a target rather than
Mhm.
heaping it all back at yourself.
That's such good advice because it's like, and someone told me this a long time ago. It's like you need to focus on like expressing, not impressing. And it's true. I think when you focus on the express and the expression and not the I'm trying to impress, you end up impressing. you know?
So good. I'm literally gonna write that down. I think it's the theme of our episode. But I think that, yeah, expressing rather than impressing is so powerful.
Well, and you just said it too. You're the one that said it, really. I'm like, that's so true. You're focusing too much on yourself and not what you're there to
Yes.
deliver.
And I think it's especially hard, a lot of our audience is young women. And, the reality, I mean, for young and old women and men, right now, it's like we're in this stage of culture where everyone has profiles and putting out content, and it's all about like put it out there. And I think it's powerful because it's a way of reaching a lot of people. And if what you're creating and stuff is really with the intention of like getting to people with value or whatever you're putting out there, then it does usually get like taken really well. But it can also lead to like, oh, but, like, what should the self-editing process is that, like, impressing energy rather than expressing, where it's like, "Okay, is this good enough? Like, should I do what this person's doing? What are people gonna think about this?" It can be really just intimidating and damaging
Yeah,
too.
no, and my biggest issue is probably just caring too much what people think, you know? And it's like
Mm,
the curse of death as an artist, really, because oh my God, when you open yourself up to the opinion committee, especially with like industry people, oh,
mhm.
it's gonna be, you gotta, it's just like, it's endless. And it's good to take it all in, but also like, you gotta realize these people are wrong a lot too. And I've had like big producers or writers or executives say, oh my God, I passed on this. Oh, I told them not to record this song. It was the biggest song of their career. So I think like you need to also remember it's all still kind of a guessing game. And at the end of the day, like take it with a grain of salt, but also don't go against your gut. If your gut's telling you something, it's like you got to really tune in and listen to that, you know? Don't underestimate the power of the gut instinct because it's there for a reason.
Such a good point. I'm interested, I'm sure as a performer, you have received critique or feedback, at certain points in your career. How have you managed that? Has there been feedback that you have had to incorporate? And has there been other feedback where you're like, I know that's wrong?
I'm one of those people that like loves critique. And no one's gonna critique me more than me, trust me. Like, I'll look back at videos, I'll listen back to things, oh my god. Before anyone gives me any critiques, like, I'm like, "I've already picked the whole thing apart. Don't worry, like, I already know where I could have done better." When people are like, "You killed it," I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. Verse 2, I did the," like, like, I'm always my harshest critic for sure. But yeah, I think it's good if you feel like the people are genuinely there to help you, and they are people who you respect, who are also in the arena, the Brene Brown thing. It's like, I don't want your opinion if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked, if you're not someone who has gone out and made stuff happen. And I think like you got to be careful, like consider the source first of where it's coming from. Number one. Number two, yeah, I think it's important to take it all in, even if you disagree with it, like take it in and think about it, let it marinate a little bit. But then ultimately, you have to like go with your gut and go, no, I think this was good or this was wrong. And I think like ultimately for me, the audience is gonna be the decision makers of it, at the end of the day. So it's like we can only all guess so much. But at the end of the day, I think I am, I guess, fortunate in the sense that like I do work in a business where you have an audience that will ultimately make those decisions for you. Like with songs, if I have 5 people at the end of a show tell me, "Oh, this song, wow, oh my god, moved me," then okay, there's my answer. Sometimes the answers come to me through people, and I really appreciate the feedback from those
Yeah.
people because I know there's no ulterior motives. Like, they have no ulterior motives. They're just people that are there to enjoy music, that love country music, or you know what I mean? So I think that that's always very telling.
Totally. I love your advice to consider the source. I mean, I think that using that to kind of filter some of those opinions, it's
Mhm.
like such good advice because I think that with social media and everything, like the arena can sometimes seem bigger than it actually is when you're
Mhm.
like, okay, I am a singer-songwriter, I'm a recorder. Like I'm going to take feedback from people who have done this
Yeah.
before, people who I can trust and know want me to
Yeah.
succeed. Like that's valuable feedback. Some troll on Instagram that doesn't even have, like, a profile on their handle or whatever, like, telling me I'm ugly or this or that, it's irrelevant, and, like, that can you can kinda toss it out because it's like the source, isn't valid, and I think if you take the feedback from everybody, then you end up being kinda nobody, You're gonna go in, every different direction if you take feedback from.
So true. Oh my God. If you end up taking feedback from everybody, you're going to be a nobody. And that's the truth because if you look at anyone like Freddie Mercury, Bohemian Rhapsody, that's like an 8-minute rock opera. Are you kidding me? They were like, you can't put this out, and then like, look what happened. So I think like, God, that is so true. And not everyone's going to get you or love what you do. And that's okay, you know?
Ugh, so good.
And if
Yes.
you're doing something that everybody loves and gets, like, you're probably not even really doing anything, honestly.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's okay to reach, like, a small group very deeply rather than trying to, like, cater to, like, a huge audience, and it's interesting because it's like, I feel like with music particularly, like, people that I've had friends that are like, "Oh, I don't like country," or "I don't like this," but then there's always, like, one artist that they're like, "But
Yeah,
actually, like, maybe I do because of this song," and this thing, and, like, you can sometimes reach people in niches that you didn't even know you could reach, but
totally.
it's, like, because you stayed in your lane and you did what you are doing and followed the people that, like, you look up to.
Yeah.
Do you have any, like, idols, either, like, idols that, are far away or in history or people who are, in your circle that you really look up to and trust for career guidance?
Oh gosh, yeah, as far as idols go, I mean, at a young age, I fell in love with Shania Twain, in love,
Mhm,
obsessed. Celine Dion, in love. Sheryl Crow, like, as a songwriter, really
mhm.
inspired me to play guitar and to, like, become a real songwriter, I was like, "She's a real songwriter, a real musician," and so that was important. As far as people that I trust, I have certain like musician collaborators, confidants, friends that have known me for a really long time that I trust because I'm like, I know there's no ulterior motives with them. I know it's like, it's pure. There's nothing that they're trying to gain or get from it. And I like their musical taste. I think they have a really good musical taste. So I'll trust them on that. It's like if someone doesn't really share the same musical taste as me, then we're probably not going to get each other. And that's okay. Again, not everyone's going to get you. I think it's so important to find the thing that is you. And I'm still finding it every day. That's the hardest part.
We're always talking about, like, the importance of mentors and people to kinda guide you. I've found that when someone tells you, like, "I see myself in you," it's usually a really good indicator that that person wants to serve you for pure interests, that it's like they have been where you are, and I think that's a really powerful motivator for someone who is a mentor. And it's honestly, it's what everything we do with Bridget is that it's like, I've been, a high schooler, a young adult that, like, is fighting off a lot, and struggling, and I want to create something that, like, that girl that where I was, would have benefited from, and I think that that's a powerful motivator for a mentor, and I saw, I think it was kind of recent, you were on stage, I think at an event that Amy Grant was putting on, and I'm obsessed with Amy Grant. I we have this, like,
Aw.
I think it's from, like, 1998, but
Oh
there's
my
a
gosh.
Christmas laser disc of her
Yeah.
and Vince Gill when they were, like, first,
We're
like,
together.
finding each other on this, like, Christmas, I think it's at the Grand Ole Opry, and we literally put the laser disc on, and we watch it and listen to, like, all the, country Christmas songs while we're decorating our tree at home, my family does.
I
And so
love
I
that.
I love her, and I have that, like, young, vision of her always in my mind with her curly hair and her beautiful voice, and when I saw that video you posted of you and her on stage, I was like, "Oh my god, Yanni is like young Amy Grant," and I can only imagine, that someone like that must look at you and see, like, your potential and your
Oh my God.
heart
That
and
would like
everything,
made
and
me cry thinking about that. Cause like Ugh. No, I mean, look, when people that I've worked with have said, like, "You remind me of, like, Sheryl Crow," or "You remind me of Amy Grant." I'm like, first of all, can we talk about Amy Grant not even being a real person? Because, I mean, she radiates just pure love, acceptance of everyone of all backgrounds. Like, no judgment. Come as you are. This door is open for everyone. There's a seat at this table for everybody. And gives so much of herself to help people. And I just went into her in the airport like a couple weeks ago, and I was, kind of going through like a stressful thing, and I was nervous. And I'm like, there she is, the angel herself. And just talking to her, you just feel like, and she's so grounded. And she's gone through her stuff, no doubt. Oh my gosh, her faith is so strong that like when you talk to her, you just feel at peace, you know? And you feel like love, just pure love. And I really can't think of a better way to serve God, honestly, because it's like we get so bogged down with rules and things and this and that. And well, I'm right, and you're wrong, and pointing the finger and drawing lines. And here's a woman that just draws no lines and loves everyone and loves God. And so I think for her to invite me, to sing at that event, and like we've become friends since, and she's sent me positive messages and positive feedback and encouragement. You just like here's someone that's mastered her craft as a songwriter, as a singer, as a communicator. Like she just knows really how to like reach into the human soul, whether you're talking to her like this or like through music, just like master communicator of like will reach into your soul and like get you. It's weird too, because when you say that, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's something that, like, I almost didn't post," or I'm going through trying to post on TikTok every day to be like a TikToker and grow all that, and so I'm, like, trying to post things. But the beauty of it is I'm posting things that I go back and look at and go like, "That was, like, over a year ago." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what a moment," and from that, we've grown a friendship, and, like, we text, and I send her music, and Vince Gill, her husband, sang on a song with me as a duet, and, to be in the caliber of those kinds of people who are so good at what they do, but then also like the best at what they do, and are just there to support and not really judge or not really, they're just there to support, and help. And I recognize like, I don't know that they do it with everyone. So maybe I'm just one of the lucky people that was able to be in their aura at the right time. But, with Vince, like he really sort of stepped into my world at a time when he doesn't even know it, but just so defeated. Like I'd left Nashville and I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this. Like my heart's broken. I have like no voice. I went through a terrible betrayal situation I can't talk about for NDA purposes. And I just thought I'm done. And I'm only going back to Nashville if I get a gig. Screw this, and then I got a gig. And I come here, singing at the gig, bump into him, talk to him. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm making an album," which I wasn't even making. In my mind, I was making it. I'm like, "You're making an album. This is
Love
what you're
it.
doing." And he wrote down his name and number and he's like, I want to sing and play on it. And it was like, okay, well, now you have to go make the album because now he's
Yes.
singing and playing on it. So like, you better get your shit together. There's another one of like the God wink moments where you're like, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to do. And I think that's a good point that you make because you can get so caught up in what's hot at the moment, what's in right now. Oh, well, this is in. So you got to do this and this look is in and you got to act like this and you got to be. No, it's like, who do you want to be like? And don't forget that. Don't forget those people and be like, that is what I want to be like. And just that is the level of human, of talent that I want to emulate and really, really like hold on to it because you will lose the vision if you don't. And so I have like vision boards and things and playlists. And I try to just kind of tune out the other noise sometimes because it really like, it's just not going to help you be you.
Well, and there's so much out there. I feel like when you're like, "Okay, I wanna be in the music industry," it's like you could go a bazillion different ways. There's a million people competing in that world that it can feel overwhelming to the point that you don't do anything. And if someone were to approach you and be like, "What are you doing?" There's a temptation to almost be like, "Whatever you want me to do. Like, what should I do?" But for you to just be like, "I'm making an album," and pick one thing to go in on, and then it's concrete to think about, "I'm gonna have this epic music career," can feel lofty. It's a great dream and goal, but it's like, it feels like where you're running around the circle trying to see like where you can kind of poke yourself in. But I think just picking one thing, like, okay, I'm making an album. Like that is tangible. An album, has so many songs, like it was released like this. I have to kind of like stage it out like that. And once you kind of write your goal out and
Yeah.
like break it into something that's realistic,
Right.
suddenly it is a thing. And I think that's so cool that you're like, you said it and it became true. And he found a way, like a lot of times when people reach out, you have to recognize when someone's trying to help you. For him to come up to you, like, people have motivations when we reach out to each other, like, it's what we do, and, like, I reached out to you, I'm like, "I think you have an incredible story, and I think that your star is, like, clearly rising," and I think there's a lot of people that, especially young women, could look at someone like you and where you're at and be like, "She's perfect," and "She's made it," and
Uh,
this, and, like, it's true.
so far from that.
Yeah, but they can't necessarily, like they can relate in the sense that they like you, but not like, "She's just like me." And I think it's just so valuable to, like, share those early nuggets and some of those doubts, but also, like, what did you do to just kinda, like, jump over that log of an obstacle and just put yourself out.
Oh, yeah, and it's weird to hear you say that because at times I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, do people think of me that way, or do girls think of me that way and think like, oh, well, she's just perfect. She's got it all together." Because it's like, oh my God. I'm like, if they only knew that, like, first of all, my voices in my head are the worst. And just all the things,
Mm.
that I've been told. And as a woman now, like in your 30s, like that's a whole new battle of, stuff that and like, oh, well, we've heard her before, it's like, and you're dealing with that. When I moved here, it's like, you got to pay your dues. You got to pay your dues. And you pay your dues and like, "Oh, we already know about her. Yeah, she's a husband," and so it's like, God, the stupid shit you have to deal with. I'm like, if people only knew.
The cool thing about your music, though, is music is such a powerful way of, like, connecting with people, and it's undeniable, like, you don't have to explain music, like, it just comes from you, and from, like, the deepest parts of you. If you could use any descriptors or, like, explain kind of how music like, what music means to you,
Yeah.
what would you say?
My gosh, music is like my lifeline, Music can dictate my mood, my actions, my life. Like it actually can change my life, the trajectory of my life. Like it's that powerful. Like when I need to get pumped up, like before a meeting or a thing, or when I'm feeling low self esteem, like I got that playlist. Like when I am like on the floor, devastated from heartbreak, not wanting to see the light of day and wishing it would just stay dark forever. Like I have my playlist for that too. And then falling in love, you have a playlist for that. It's just such a powerful tool. Yeah, it's just like a life changer, for me, because it's like literally a lifesaver, a life changer, my lifeline. Like it has changed my life and it does every day.
I love that. I mean, I like, sing to my daughter every night. I am not a
Oh,
singer.
it doesn't matter though. For her to hear your voice is so special. Oh,
Yeah, it's been so special to us because and even, like, singing to my firstborn with my second in my belly, so knowing that she's, like, hearing my voice from within, but it's just, we sing, like, the same songs every night, but I've realized, like, how important that is to her, and I've also had moments, sometimes where I'm, like, just feeling like the best mom and I sing a certain way, and then I've had moments where I'm like, my baby's sick and I feel like I can't do anything about it, and my voice comes out with the same song a different way, and the voice ha the song has a completely almost different meaning as you hear it. I just think that it's just such a powerful, like, emotional tool that everybody connects to in some
yeah.
way.
Yeah, whether you can sing or not, like, that's not the point. It's like your voice that you're using to and some of my favorite artists are not the best singers, by the way, at all, but you feel like what they're communicating, and so that's really
Yeah, they're able to tap into that, like,
yeah,
emotion.
and at the end of the day, that's what it's supposed to do is evoke an emotion. Is it evoke an emotion or not, right? Like, that's the most important thing.
You mentioned a little earlier about some things that you've developed to, like, better take care of yourself, your voice, your physical body. Can you walk us through any of, like, those practices or routines or even things like you do right before you perform?
Yeah, I've always been a health freak, total health nut, always, but I think as I've gotten older, I'm even, like, more meticulous about it and more rigid about it just because as a singer, like you can't really get sick.
Yeah.
You're screwed. I just sang in Madison Square Garden a couple months ago, and I got sick. So I had to do a steroid shot, and it's a whole thing. And you're like, "Ugh, I gotta do a shot," and it's just, and that's not good because that has side effects, and those things really only you can only do them for so long, and it's like a band
Yeah.
aid, right? I'm really really careful about how I take care of myself because being youthful, having good energy, taking care of my voice. This is, as a singer, you're not a guitar player who can go out and party and drink and like show up the next day and kill it. Like as a singer, you're like that will affect you. You've been out talking, drinking, not getting sleep, like it affects you. So I think I'm pretty rigid about that just because it sort of ups my whole performance when I am on it and on a program. I try to wake up, drink water. I try to juice as often as I can. Lately, it's like almost every day. I try to eat healthy food. I make almost all my own food, but I still go out and eat and I'll crush a hamburger and fries. And I'm like I'm not by any means like I can't eat
Yeah. 80/20.
yeah. Like I definitely go out and like crush really unhealthy food every once in a while. But for the most part, yeah, I try to do all that just because I mentally feel better. That's the biggest thing. And with exercise, like every day, pretty much have to. Even if it's just walking a couple miles, it's a mental thing that really happens for me where I feel like I can write better, I can perform better, I show up better in the room. Like it's just everything all encompassing. So I think that, and I get a lot of song ideas too when I go out on walks. A lot of my creative ideas will come from that, or when I'm just outside in nature. Yeah, it's different. There's different seasons for things. Like right now, I'm kind of getting back into like reading more because I'm getting more into like writing and songwriting. And think a lot of times for songwriting, so much of it is filling the well with those little nuggets, and those things to help you.
Images and phrases and all those
Totally.
things,
Yep.
right? I think there's actually there's research about the way your mind works when you're walking. One of my favorite things to do
Oh,
with, like, my girlfriends, I mean, it's hard to find the older we get, right, and we're busier everybody
you have
gets, it's really hard
kids.
to find time to, like, yeah, make time with your friends. So originally it started out as kinda multitasking, like, well, let's exercise and
I
hang out
call it a walk and
together.
a talk. Walk and talk. It's
Yeah,
the best.
but I found, like, it also leads to, like, the best conversations with my friends because having that kinda, like, steady, low intensity heart rate, and the fresh air and everything, I think it's, like, such a powerful way to connect with friends, but also, like, with yourself when you're like, "I just wanna
Yeah,
go for
and
a
you don't have
walk."
to meet at like a happy hour for a drink. And I'm like, I think already in our industry, there's so much alcohol involved at events, at shows, at things, and everyone's having a drink. So I think if I can, I'm like, and you're right, like talking and walking, you're releasing endorphins. You're having conversations you would never be having at a bar ever. Like things will come out, wouldn't come out anywhere else, in my experience.
Totally.
And you're killing two birds with one stone. You're like, I'm getting an exercise in.
Exactly. I think it's like I like to see meaning in everything, like, kind of a metaphorical person, but, like, walking with your friend in the same direction I think it's just, like, such a nice metaphor, like, you're parallel lines, but you're moving in the same
Yeah.
direction, you want the same things. I'm like and I think in that sense, like, the conversation's just so good when you're physically kind of
Yes.
embodying what you want out of that
Well, the
relationship.
other day, like we were talking, and like before I looked down, I'm like, oh my God, we just walked 6 miles. Like normally I'd be like, oh God, 5 miles, like I'm like, it was like without even realizing. So it's amazing how it can do that too.
Yeah, and I can imagine, like, in a career like yours, there are probably people who have been alongside you, helping you, take these next steps and stuff, and you're gonna look back at different moments and be like, "Oh my god, like, we just performed this many shows, or we just put out this many songs, and, like, it didn't even feel like it because I was alongside, these particular people." So I definitely want you have your album coming out soon. I want you to pitch that, tell us a little bit about it, when it's coming out, and kinda what to expect.
It's a work in progress. Don't know when it's coming out. I'll say most likely in the next year, but I'll have a song out in like a month or two. So that will be more recent. Like probably a few. I think it's some of the best songwriting that I've ever done. And so I am proud of that as an artist. And I feel like there's a lot of like artistic integrity in it. And I have collaborations with Vince Gill, with Dwight Yoakam, who's one of my all-time favorites too, and Raul Malo, who's amazing, lead singer of the Mavericks. Thematically, we're calling it the Caged Bird album, inspired by Maya Angelou. I know why the caged bird sings, which is appropriate for, pandemic. and everything that the world went through, but also what I went through, not being able to sing and losing my voice. And so I'm excited. It's nerve-wracking, it's exciting, and I do think there's something on it for everyone. So,
I love
yeah.
that. Okay, well, we usually close out with kind of like a fast 5 little questions,
Well, okay.
and you just say what kind of first comes to mind. For number 1, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Don't care so much about what other people think because they're just thinking about themselves.
Oh, so true. I think that, like, that's so true. So many people, it's like, "Oh, they're still thinking this thing about me." It's like, "No, like, we walk around as I," most other people, like, they're thinking
Yeah, they're
about
not even
themselves,
thinking
like,
about
they're not
you.
thinking.
But in my mind, I'm like, they're totally thinking about they're not, you know?
Amen. Number 2, what's your favorite way to unplug?
Yoga. I think it's the no
Amen.
phone thing and, surfing too when I can, which is rare. But it's when
Mhm.
I'm not with my phone. It's like being disconnected to my
Yeah.
phone, honestly. Because look, the phone is, oh my God, it's like amazing. It's such a blessing. We can do everything from this thing, post, email, everything. But it's also such a distraction that I think it cripples a lot of other things. So I just have to have moments where when I go to sleep, I try not to have it near my bed, which I know is probably hard when one day when you have kids and stuff. But yeah, I'd say yoga, surf, probably.
Yeah, things that bring you back into the present, for sure.
Yes.
Number 3, what do you see as your most essential habit for a successful day?
Probably doing something every day that scares me, that's growing me. Cause you can check off to-do lists and okay, great, plenty of those days. And like the days where I really I'm like, man, that took balls and like you did it.
For number 4, do you have a favorite, like, lyric from a song or something that really moved you?
Mm,
Or a song in general?
really good question. Oh my God, I've never ever been asked that. And there are so many songs. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
Oh, so
Yeah.
good. Nailed it. And number 5, you said you cook most of your meals.
Uh,
What is your favorite
ah,
meal to cook?
I'm like a bowl master. I love the bowls.
Me
I'm
too.
like, I'll throw in like sweet potato, rice, meat, vegetable things, and I just like whip together bowls. I live for the bowl life, and I have like all my little sriracha sauces and things that I'll like put with it. I'm really into bowls. Yeah.
Yep. Colorful and fun.
Yeah.
I know, my sister for the longest time, she's like, "You don't actually like salad." I'm like, "I do, because you can literally it's an excuse to kinda have
Totally.
everything." But it's like you can have something sweet, you can have a cheese, you can have a
Yep.
meat, you can have vegetables, and I'm like, and it's
I'm the same.
delightful. The more colorful, the better.
Totally.
Well, for our final question, we always ask, what was one quality that you had as a young woman that maybe you didn't take pride in then, but you so appreciate now?
I'd say probably my moral standards. I've had of course, been approached by men in like inappropriate ways. And that's just something that as a woman you're gonna deal with. You are. It's just
Mhm.
I think some men have dealt with it. So I shouldn't say it's just women, because I've talked to guys that have as well. I'd say it's more common as a woman. And so I think never really bending, my moral standards and like sticking to my guns and like knowing like, yeah, I have a backbone and like I will stand up for what I believe in. And if I'm going to go down, I want to die on my own sword.
So good. Yeah, and that'll serve you in the
Yeah, stick
end.
to your guns.
I love
Stick
it.
to your guns, whether it be a creative decision, a business decision, a moral decision, a relationship. Like, don't bend your value. Don't. You'll
Love it.
always lose in the end.
Love it. Where can people find you? They wanna listen to your
Oh
music, they
my
wanna follow you on
goodness.
all your platforms.
All the
Shout
things:
out.
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, website. I'm on them all. I'm on them. Yeah.
Love it. Annie Bosko. Well, thank you so much, Annie. This has been such a treat. Can't wait for your story to reach our audience and to continue just watching you do your thing and thrive. Your star is rising, as I said before, and thank you. Thank you again for
Thank you
spending this
so
time with
much.
us.
I really appreciate it. I've had such a good time and I have learned so much in this past hour. So thank you. All
Likewise.
right. Talk
All
to you
right. Thanks,
soon.
Annie.